What dude millionaire sees window cleaner with quadruplets, and what he does shocks everyone. Harrison Sterling sighed heavily as he watched the city movement below from his office window on the 42nd floor. At 53, the businessman had built a financial empire, but since losing his wife Eleanor 2 years ago, he felt as if his life had lost all meaning. That's when something completely unexpected caught his attention. A young man wearing an orange cleaning uniform was descending the side of the building suspended by safety cables. But what made Harrison blink several times to make sure he wasn't dreaming was the fact that the young man was carrying 4 babies strapped to his body in colorful slings. That window cleaner was working at a height of over 500 feet from the ground, balancing with impressive dexterity while protecting 4 small children against his chest and back. Harrison called his secretary on the intercom, trying to control the disbelief in his voice. When Deborah entered the room, he pointed to the window. "Do you see that?" he asked, still watching the surreal scene outside. Deborah approached the window and widened her eyes. The young window cleaner moved the squeegee with professional precision, but with each movement, he took care not to disturb the babies. He had created an ingenious system using the slings, keeping 2 children in front and 2 on his back, all firmly secured and protected from the strong wind at that height. "Good heavens, what is this situation?" murmured Deborah, bringing her hand to her chest. "How did they let that young man go up there with those children?" Harrison couldn't take his eyes off the scene. There was something in the young man's dedication and care that touched him deeply. The young man worked slowly, constantly checking if the babies were okay, speaking softly to them as if explaining what he was doing. From time to time, he stopped working completely to adjust one of the slings or check if any child had moved too much. "Go down to the building management and find out who authorized this," said Harrison without looking away. "I want to speak to whoever is responsible for this situation." 20 minutes later, Deborah returned accompanied by Mr. Arthur, the building superintendent. The gray-haired man seemed embarrassed and nervous to be in the office of the building's most important businessman. "Mr. Harrison, I can explain the situation," began Mr. Arthur, twisting his cap in his hands. "The young man's name is Caleb Dawson. He's 22. He works for the company that handles the external window cleaning. This morning he showed up here desperate, saying he had no one to leave his children with." Harrison turned to the superintendent, interested in the story. "Go on," he said, crossing his arms. "Well, at first the cleaning company denied the request, but the young man begged so much, said that if he didn't work today he wouldn't have dollars to buy diapers and formula for the children. He promised it would only be for today, that he would only work during the building's slowest hours. We ended up giving in." Deborah shook her head, worried. Harrison, on the other hand, felt a growing curiosity about that young father. "Did he say anything about the children's mother?" asked Harrison. Mr. Arthur sighed deeply before answering. "That's where the story gets sad, Mr. Harrison. The young man is a single father to the quadruplets. The baby's mother disappeared right after giving birth, left the children at the hospital and vanished. He took on everything alone, wouldn't even hear about giving the children up for adoption. But imagine, sir, taking care of 4 babies alone and still having to work to support them all." The businessman felt something stir in his chest. During the 2 years since Eleanor's passing, he had completely buried himself in work, avoiding any situation that might stir up emotions. But that scene of the young father struggling to support his children under such harsh conditions touched something deep within him. "How many jobs does he have?" he continued asking. "From what he told me, he works 3 different places. In the morning he delivers cooking gas. In the afternoon he cleans building windows, and at night he cleans a gas station. The poor guy probably doesn't sleep more than 2-3 hours a night." Harrison returned to the window and observed the young man more closely. Caleb had stopped working and was speaking softly to one of the babies who had woken up. He gently swayed his body, rocking the child while still suspended by the safety cables. The scene was both concerning and touching. "Mr. Arthur, I want to speak with this young man when he finishes the work," Harrison said decisively. The building manager seemed surprised. "Of course, Mr. Harrison, he should come down in about 2 hours." After Mr. Arthur left, Deborah looked at Harrison curiously. "Are you going to offer him help?" she asked delicately. Harrison didn't answer immediately. Since Eleanor passed away, he had shut down emotionally, focusing all his energy on business. They never had children. They always postponed the idea, claiming the timing wasn't right. When they finally decided to try, Eleanor discovered she had a health condition that made pregnancy impossible. It was one of the regrets that tormented him most, having wasted so many years thinking there would always be time to start a family. "I don't know yet," he finally replied, "but I want to hear his story." 2 hours later, Harrison went down to the building's ground floor. Caleb had finished the work and was in the makeshift locker room in the basement, changing clothes and getting the babies organized. When Harrison arrived, he found him sitting on the floor, feeding 2 of the baby's bottles simultaneously, while the other 2 slept in an adapted stroller. "Are you Caleb?" asked Harrison, approaching cautiously. The young man looked up, clearly surprised to see such a well-dressed man in that place. Caleb had brown hair tousled by the wind, tired but determined eyes, and appeared much older than his 22 years, due to the weight of his responsibilities. "Yes, sir. Is something wrong?" replied Caleb, with a touch of worry in his voice. "My name is Harrison Sterling. I have the office on the 42nd floor. I saw you working today with the children, and I was impressed." Caleb lowered his eyes, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, sir. I know it's not normal, but today I really didn't have another choice. The neighbor who watches them sometimes had to travel last minute because of a family problem. I promise it won't happen again." Harrison moved closer and observed the 4 babies. They were beautiful, healthy, and it was clear they were very well cared for. Their little clothes were clean and tidy, and they seemed calm and secure in their father's presence. "How do you manage to care for 4 babies alone?" asked Harrison, genuinely curious. Caleb's face lit up slightly, as it always did when he talked about his children. "Oh, we manage, you know, sir. They already have a good routine. Noah and Chloe are calmer, they sleep more. Liam and Maya are more active, but also smarter. Each one has their own personality. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." Harrison felt a tightness in his chest, hearing the affectionate way Caleb spoke about his children. The young man's unconditional love for the children was evident. "And their mother?" he asked delicately. Harrison's smile vanished immediately. He adjusted the position of one of the babies before answering. "Jenna. She couldn't handle the situation. When we found out they were quadruplets, she panicked. She said she didn't have the emotional or financial structure to raise 4 children. After the delivery, she stayed 3 days at the hospital, wrote a letter apologizing, and left." The pain in the young man's voice was palpable. Harrison realized this was a wound that was still very fresh and sensitive. "And you never heard from her again?" "No, sir. She changed her phone number, left the city. Her family didn't want to give me any information either. At first, I tried to look for her. I thought she might be going through postpartum depression, that maybe she needed help. But then I understood it was her decision, so I decided I would take care of my children alone." Harrison admired the young man's determination and maturity. At 22, Caleb had taken on a responsibility that many older men wouldn't have the courage to face. "It must be very difficult to work 3 jobs and still take care of 4 babies." Caleb let out a bitter laugh. "It is difficult, sir. But they are my life. When I look at them, I remember all the effort is worth it. They didn't ask to be born, so it's my duty to give them the best I can." At that moment, one of the babies started to cry. Caleb immediately picked the child up and began to rock gently, whispering words of affection. The crying stopped almost instantly. Harrison was impressed by the naturalness and efficiency of the fatherly movements. "How many months are they?" asked Harrison. 7 months now. They were born premature, spent a month in the NICU. It was the hardest period of my life, going to work in the morning and spending the afternoons and nights at the hospital, watching them fight to survive. Harrison imagined the anguish the young man must have felt during that time. He himself had spent months at the hospital accompanying Eleanor during her last hospitalization, and he knew how that environment could be emotionally devastating. "Caleb, I have a proposal for you," Harrison said unexpectedly. The young man looked at him with suspicion. What kind of proposal, sir? I have an investment company. I need someone to clean and maintain the windows of my house. It's a large property with many windows and glass panes. It could be a steady job with a formal contract. Caleb seemed interested, but still cautious. And the hours, sir? That's the point. The work would be flexible. You could bring the children, work whatever hours were best for you. I have a large property with a garden where they could stay safe while you work. The young man was silent for a long moment, weighing the proposal. Harrison perceived the internal struggle Caleb was facing, the financial need against natural distrust. "Why would you do this for me?" he finally asked. It was a fair question, and Harrison needed a moment to find an honest answer. Because I admire your dedication, and because I have a very big and very empty house. Maybe it would be good for all of us." Caleb looked at the 4 babies, then back at Harrison. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Here is my card. If you decide to accept, call me tomorrow." Harrison handed over the card and turned to leave, but Caleb called him back. "Mr. Harrison, do you have children?" The question hit Harrison like a punch to the gut. He stopped, but did not turn around. "No," he answered simply. "I never have." That night, Harrison arrived home earlier than usual. His mansion in the Beverly Hills neighborhood was immense, with 15 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, elaborate gardens, and an impressive view of the city. But since Eleanor had passed away, the house felt like an empty, silent mausoleum. Mrs. Hattie, the housekeeper who had worked for the family for over 15 years, was surprised to see him arrive before 9 in the evening. "You're home early today," she remarked, serving him coffee in the dining room. "Hattie, tell me something. Would you like it if there were small children in this house from time to time?" The question took the employee by surprise. She had known Harrison since he was married to Eleanor, had witnessed the couple's sadness over never being able to have children, and then all the pain of the loss. "What a strange question, Mr. Harrison. Why are you asking that?" Harrison told her about the meeting with Caleb and his idea of offering the young man work. Mrs. Hattie listened attentively, and at the end she sighed emotionally. "Oh, Mr. Harrison, it would be a blessing to have children's laughter in this house. Mrs. Eleanor would have loved knowing you're thinking of helping a family in need." It was true. Eleanor had always been very sensitive to social causes and often insisted that Harrison use part of his fortune for charitable projects. But since she had passed, he had closed himself off from any kind of emotional involvement. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" asked Harrison, a question he hadn't asked in a long time. "Mr. Harrison, ever since Mrs. Eleanor left us, you've been living like a ghost in this house. You work all day, come home late, barely talk to anyone. Maybe these children can bring a little life back here." Harrison stayed awake all night, thinking about the conversation with Caleb. There was something about that young father that stirred feelings he had buried along with Eleanor. Perhaps it was the determination, the courage to take on such huge responsibilities at such a young age, or simply the purity of the love he showed for his children. The next morning, Caleb called early. "Mr. Harrison, it's Caleb. I thought a lot about your proposal. If the offer still stands, I'd like to accept." "Great. When can you start?" "Well, I need to let my other jobs know I'm leaving. Can I start on Monday?" "Perfect. I'll send my driver to pick you up. Give me your address." When Caleb gave the address, Harrison realized the young man lived in a very impoverished part of the city. The reality of the hardships he faced became even clearer. On Monday morning, Harrison's driver, Mr. Frank, returned from picking up Caleb with a worried expression on his face. "Mr. Harrison, you need to see the conditions that young man lives in with those 4 children," said Frank when they arrived at the mansion. "What do you mean?" "It's a tiny room in a tenement, sir. Barely enough space for him and the 4 little cribs. There isn't even a proper refrigerator, just a small cooler. The bathroom is shared with other families." Harrison felt a tightness in his chest. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the property, Caleb was staring in awe at the grandeur of the mansion. He carried a large backpack with supplies for the babies and pushed a double stroller holding 2 children. The other 2 were in slings attached to his body. "My God," Caleb murmured when Harrison greeted him at the front door. "Welcome," said Harrison, trying to sound casual despite the emotion he felt seeing those 4 children on his property. Mrs. Hattie appeared immediately, curious to meet the babies. When she saw the quadruplets, her features melted with tenderness. "Oh, what beautiful little things," she said, approaching carefully. "May I hold one of them?" Caleb hesitated for a moment. It was obvious he had a very strong protective instinct toward his children. But something in Mrs. Hattie's maternal expression reassured him. "Of course," he said, carefully removing Chloe from the sling. "This is Chloe. She's the calmest of the 4. Mrs. Hattie picked up the baby with the natural ease of someone who had raised 5 children of her own. Chloe looked at her curiously but didn't cry. "She is too beautiful," said the housekeeper, gently rocking the child. "And the others?" "This is Noah," said Caleb, pointing to the baby in the stroller. "He is Chloe's twin, born 2 minutes after her. That one over there is Liam, who is the most active of them all. And this little one here," he stroked the head of the baby in the other sling, "is Maya, our little warrior. She was born last and gave us the most trouble in the ICU." Harrison observed the interaction in silence, touched by the affectionate way Caleb introduced each child. It was evident the young man knew each child's personality deeply. "Well then, let's give you a tour of the property so you can see the work," said Harrison. As they walked through the gardens, Caleb set up a full logistical operation. He spread blankets under a large tree, positioned the stroller in the shade, and organized the baby's supplies so he could reach everything quickly. "You've done this before," observed Harrison, impressed with the organization. "I've had to take them to work a few times when I had no other choice," admitted Caleb. "I learned that organization is key when caring for 4 babies alone." Harrison showed him all the windows and glass that needed cleaning. The property had huge windows in practically every room, plus a sunroom with a glass ceiling and a pool with glass walls overlooking the garden. "That's a lot of work," said Caleb, assessing the extent of the task. "That's why the payment will be proportional, and you'll have complete schedule flexibility. If any of the children get sick or need special care, the work can wait." During the first week, Harrison discreetly watched from the window of his home office. Caleb had developed a fascinating routine. He constantly talked to the babies while he worked, explaining each movement as if they were his little assistants. "Now Daddy is going to clean this big window here," he would say to the babies. "You all stay there quietly admiring the garden while Daddy works." Harrison caught himself smiling for the first time in months. The children's presence had completely transformed the atmosphere of the house. For the first time since Eleanor's death, there were sounds of life echoing through the empty rooms. Mrs. Hattie was in 7th heaven. During Caleb's breaks, she helped care for the babies, prepared bottles, and even hummed lullabies she had used with her own children decades ago. "Mr. Harrison, these children have brought such a beautiful energy to this house," she commented one day. "You also seem more cheerful." It was true. Harrison found himself coming home earlier, eager to see how the children's day had been. He began to learn each baby's name and recognize their different personalities, exactly as Caleb had described. Noah really was the calmest, spending long periods observing everything around him with attentive, intelligent eyes. Chloe was sweet and smiley, always reacting positively when someone spoke to her. Liam was the most active, always moving his arms and legs, making sounds and trying to communicate. Maya was small but had a strong personality. She cried when she wanted something and only calmed down when her needs were met. After 2 weeks of work, the first unforeseen event happened. Maya woke up in the middle of the night with a high fever. Caleb, desperate, called Harrison at 5 in the morning. "Mr. Harrison, sorry to call so early, but Maya has a very high fever. I need to take her to the hospital, but I won't be able to work today." "Caleb, don't worry about the work. Where are you taking her?" "At the neighborhood health clinic. It's what I can afford." Harrison had made an impulsive decision. "No, I'll send my driver to pick you up. We're taking her to Hope Children's Medical Center." "Mr. Harrison, I don't have the dollars to pay for a private hospital." "Don't worry about that now. The important thing is to take care of your daughter." An hour later, Harrison was in the hospital waiting room, holding Noah in his lap, while Caleb accompanied Maya to the appointment. The other 2 children slept in the double stroller. It was a scene he had never imagined living, caring for babies in a children's hospital. Mrs. Hattie had insisted on coming along, and now she helped organize bottles and change diapers as needed. Harrison watched her every move, unconsciously learning the basics of baby care. When Caleb came out of the examination room with Maya in his arms, he looked visibly relieved. "It's just a simple virus," he announced. "The doctor said with medication she'll get better in a few days." Harrison felt a relief that surprised him. In just 2 weeks, those 4 children had become part of his daily routine in a way he hadn't expected. "That's good," he said, reaching out his arms to take Maya. "May I?" Caleb handed over the baby, and Harrison held her carefully. Maya looked at him with her big, dark eyes, still feverish but calmer after the medication. For a moment, Harrison remembered how Eleanor used to hold their friends' children, always with that expression of maternal love in her eyes. On the way back home, Caleb was quiet for a long time. Finally, he turned to Harrison. "Why did you do that?" he asked. "Paying for a private hospital, coming along, looking after the others. Why?" Harrison took a while to answer. He wasn't even sure of his own motivations. Because they matter," he said finally. "And you matter. I guess that's it." Caleb was moved by the simple but sincere answer. "I've never had someone who cared about me and them like this. Not even my own parents supported me when I decided to keep the children." "What do you mean?" "They think I was irresponsible to take on 4 babies alone. They said I should have put them up for adoption. That way they'd have a structured family, and I could get on with my life." We kind of drifted apart after that. Harrison felt indignation growing inside him. How could parents abandon their child in such a difficult time? "You made the right decision," Harrison said with conviction. "They are your children, and you're doing an exceptional job caring for them." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, as Maya recovered from the virus, Harrison found himself increasingly involved in the children's routine. He would come home at lunchtime to check on her, and several times he looked after the other 3 children, while Caleb focused on the special care Maya needed. It was during this period that Harrison made a surprising discovery about himself. He had natural paternal instincts he had never explored. He could calm Noah when he got fussy, knew exactly how Chloe liked to be rocked, and even developed a special technique to make Liam laugh. One afternoon, when he arrived home, he found Caleb sitting in the garden with the 4 children spread out around him on colorful blankets. The young man looked exhausted. He had been up several nights in a row caring for Maya and working during the day to make up for lost time. "Why don't you take the rest of the afternoon off?" suggested Harrison. "I can watch them for a few hours." Caleb looked at him in surprise. "You know how to take care of babies." "I'm learning," admitted Harrison with a smile. "Mrs. Hattie can help me if I need it." Caleb hesitated, but exhaustion won over resistance. "Just a few hours then. I need to take care of some things in the city." When Caleb left, Harrison found himself alone with 4 babies for the first time. Initially, he felt a bit of panic, but he soon discovered the situation was calmer than he had imagined. The children seemed to accept his presence naturally. He sat in the middle of the blankets and observed each baby individually. Noah was playing with a colorful rattle, moving it from side to side with total concentration. Chloe smiled at the tree leaves swaying in the wind. Liam was trying to roll over to reach a toy that was just out of his grasp. And Maya, still a bit worn out from her recent illness, slept peacefully. For a moment, Harrison imagined what it would be like if those were his children, if he and Eleanor had managed to have the family they so desired. The feeling was both painful and comforting. When Caleb returned 3 hours later, he found Harrison lying on the lawn with Noah asleep on his chest, while the other 3 children dozed around him. "How did it go?" asked Caleb quietly, so as not to wake the babies. "Better than I expected," replied Harrison, also whispering. "I think I'm starting to understand why you love all this chaos so much." Caleb smiled. "It's not easy, but it's the best thing in the world." That night, Harrison couldn't stop thinking about the afternoon he had spent with the children. He had discovered a part of himself he had never known, a capacity to love and care that had been dormant for years. The next day, he surprised Caleb with an unexpected proposal. "I was thinking, what if we renovated part of the house to make it more suitable for the children? We could make a temporary nursery, a space just for them to play." Caleb was confused. "Mr. Harrison, they're only here during the workday. They don't need a room." "But they'd be more comfortable, don't you think? And you could also rest better between tasks." The truth was that Harrison had grown attached to the children in a way he didn't fully understand himself. The thought of spending even a single day without seeing them left him inexplicably sad. Caleb sensed there was something deeper behind the proposal. "Mr. Harrison, can I ask a personal question?" "Of course. Did you never want to have children? It's just the way you care for them seems so natural." Harrison sighed deeply. It was a question that touched the most painful wound of his life. "My wife and I tried to have children for many years. At first, we always put it off, thinking we had time. Later, when we finally decided to try, we found out it wouldn't be possible. Eleanor had a problem that, well, we couldn't." "I'm so sorry," said Caleb sincerely. "After she passed away, I thought I would never have the chance to be a father in some way. And then you all came into my life." Caleb was touched by Harrison's honesty. "You've been like a grandfather to them. They like you. I can see it in how they react when you arrive." It was true. The children had grown accustomed to Harrison and showed joy when they saw him. Noah would reach out his little arms when he saw him approach. Chloe would give him her first smiles of the day. Liam would get more excited and vocal, as if trying to have a conversation. And Maya, who was more reserved with strangers, would let him hold her without crying. "You know what impresses me the most?" Harrison continued. "It's how you manage to be both a father and a mother to them at the same time. It's a dedication few men would have." Caleb blushed slightly. "It's just that they only have me. I can't let them down." "Have you thought about the future? When they grow up, go to school, need other things?" "I think about that every day," admitted Caleb. "Sometimes I lie awake at night doing the math, trying to figure out how I'm going to manage to give 4 kids a good education, how I'm going to explain to them about their mother. It's a lot of responsibility for someone my age." Harrison noticed the real anguish Caleb carried. Despite the dedication and unconditional love he showed, the young man faced perfectly understandable fears and insecurities. "Have you talked to anyone about these fears?" "Who am I going to talk to? My parents think I was irresponsible. My friends my age are worried about having fun, dating, studying. No one understands my situation." At that moment, Harrison made a decision that would change all their lives. "Caleb, I want to make a different proposal to you. How about you and the children come live here?" The young man nearly choked on the water he was drinking. "What do you mean, Mr. Harrison? This house is huge and empty. You 5 could have your own space, independent. You wouldn't pay rent, you'd have all the structure to care for the children, and I would have the company I need." Caleb was silent for a long moment, processing the surprising proposal. "Mr. Harrison, that is incredibly generous, but why would you do that?" "Because ever since Eleanor died, this house has become a mausoleum. I live like a ghost here. When you all arrive in the morning, the house comes to life. When you leave at night, the silence becomes deafening again." The raw honesty of the answer touched Caleb deeply. "And what would you expect in return?" "Just that you bring life to this house. And maybe I could be something like a grandfather to them. I know I can't replace a traditional family, but I can offer stability and affection." Caleb looked at the 4 children playing in the garden. The proposal would solve all his practical problems, housing, security, structure for the children, but it also represented a radical change in their lives. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But think about them too. Here they would have space to grow, to play, a pool when they get older, safe gardens to run in. And I could help with their education in the future." That night, Caleb stayed up very late in his cramped little room in the tenement, watching the 4 babies sleeping squeezed into small cribs. The contrast with the space and comfort of Harrison's mansion was brutal. But beyond the practical matters, Caleb realized he had developed a genuine affection for Harrison. The man he had known as a rich, distant businessman had revealed himself to be a lonely and caring person who found in the children a reason to smile again. The next morning, Caleb arrived at the mansion with a decision made. "Mr. Harrison, I accept your proposal, but I would like to set some conditions." "Tell me what they are." "First, I want to keep working. I can't live on charity. I need to contribute somehow. Second, if at any point you get tired of us or want us to leave, we'll go, no argument. Third, I maintain full authority over decisions related to the children." Harrison smiled. The conditions were fair and demonstrated Caleb's dignity and responsibility. "I accept all the conditions, and I'll add a fourth. You will study. I want to pay for college for you, so you have more career options in the future." Caleb was moved by the generosity of the additional proposal. "Are you sure you want this?" "I'm sure we need each other," Harrison replied sincerely. The move happened the following week. Harrison made sure to completely renovate a wing of the mansion to accommodate Caleb and the babies. A large room had been transformed into a nursery, with 4 new cribs, a changing table, a play area, and all the necessary equipment. The room next door became Caleb's personal space, with a comfortable bed, a desk for studying, and a private bathroom. Mrs. Hattie was radiant with the new setup. Finally, the house would have the life and energy it had always lacked. Mr. Frank, the driver, was also enthusiastic and offered to help with transporting the children whenever necessary. On the first official day as new residents of the mansion, Caleb woke up in a comfortable bed for the first time in months. The children slept peacefully in spacious cribs, each with their own space. For the first time since they were born, Caleb managed to sleep 6 hours straight. Harrison, in turn, woke up to sounds he hadn't heard in years: a baby's cry, Caleb's affectionate conversations with his children, laughter and babbling. Instead of being bothered, he felt a joy he hadn't experienced since before Eleanor's death. During breakfast, they established a new routine. Caleb would continue taking care of the house maintenance and cleaning, but now with much more flexible hours. Harrison would help with the children's care whenever possible, especially on weekends. "How was the first night?" asked Harrison. "Incredible," replied Caleb, smiling. "They slept through the night. I slept 6 hours straight. I can't remember the last time that happened." Harrison watched the 4 children drinking from bottles in high chairs, lined up at the kitchen table. It was a domestic scene he had always dreamed of living. "I'm thinking of hiring a nanny to help you during the day," suggested Harrison. "You don't need to, Mr. Harrison. I can handle them." "It's not because you can't handle it. It's so you can have more time to study, rest, or simply be young. You're only 22, Caleb. You can't give up everything because of the children." It was a point that touched on something Caleb tried not to think about. His friends his age were in college, dating, going to parties, living typical young adult experiences. He had given all that up to be a father. "It's just, I'm afraid of getting used to conveniences and then not being able to live without them," admitted Caleb. Harrison understood the insecurity. "Caleb, this isn't temporary. If it's up to me, you have a home here for as long as you want. And I want you to think about the future not just as a father, but as a person. These children need a fulfilled and happy father." That afternoon, Harrison surprised Caleb by bringing home a young woman named Rachel, who had a degree in education and specialized in childcare. "Hi, Caleb," said Rachel with contagious energy. "Harrison told me about you and the Quadruplets. What a beautiful story. Can I meet them?" Rachel was 28, originally from Ohio, and had moved to New York City specifically to work with families. Her energy and knowledge about child development impressed both Caleb and Harrison. "They're beautiful," said Rachel, after interacting with each baby. "And they are super well cared for. Congratulations, Caleb. You're doing an amazing job." The professional compliment meant a lot to Caleb, who sometimes felt insecure about his parenting skills. "Rachel will work part-time," explained Harrison. "In the morning so you can dedicate yourself to your studies and other activities. In the afternoons and evenings, they stay with you." Rachel's arrival brought a new dynamic to the house. She not only cared for the children with professional competence, but also taught new techniques to Caleb and even to Harrison. She showed appropriate stimuli for each age, educational games, and ways to promote the children's development. "You can stimulate their development much more," explained Rachel during one of the first weeks. Noah, for example, has the traits of a very observant child. We can work on that with toys that stimulate concentration. Harrison became deeply interested in Rachel's methods. He discovered that child development was a fascinating area, full of nuances he had never considered. One afternoon, while Rachel worked with the children in the garden, Harrison and Caleb were talking about plans for the future. "Have you thought about what course you want to take?" asked Harrison. "I've always liked math and organization, maybe business administration or accounting." "Why not engineering, or even medicine?" Caleb laughed. "Mr. Harrison, I barely finished high school. Those careers are for people like you, who had the opportunity to study at good schools." Harrison became thoughtful. "You know, Caleb, intelligence and potential have nothing to do with social class. You have an ability to organize and solve problems that impresses anyone. Look at how you manage 4 babies, work, and still have energy for everything. But medicine is many years of study. How would I do that with 4 children to raise? With help, with structure, with people who believe in you." The conversation planted a seed in Caleb's mind. For the first time, he allowed himself to dream beyond basic survival. That night, Harrison had an idea that would change the course of their lives forever. For years, he had maintained a foundation that funded educational projects. What if he created a specific program for young parents in vulnerable situations? People like Caleb, who had potential but needed structural support to be able to study. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Harrison presented the idea to Caleb. "I'm going to create a pilot program through my foundation. Young single parents will be able to receive scholarships, childcare support, and professional mentorship. You would be the first beneficiary, and if it works, we would expand it to others." Caleb was moved by the proposal, but also apprehensive. "What if I can't handle it? If I'm not smart enough?" "Caleb, you are already handling something that many experienced adults couldn't. Raising 4 babies alone, working, keeping your sanity. If that isn't proof of intelligence and capability, I don't know what is." The conversation was interrupted by Rachel, who arrived excited with news about the children. "Harrison, Caleb, you need to see this," she said, heading to the nursery. In the nursery, Rachel had set up a simple activity with colorful objects. To everyone's surprise, Noah had demonstrated exceptional motor coordination for his age, stacking blocks in an organized way. Chloe had shown a special interest in little books with different textures. Liam demonstrated a fascination for toys that produced musical sounds. And Maya, despite still being the smallest, showed an impressive determination to reach objects that were far away. "Each one is already showing individual preferences and abilities," explained Rachel. "It's amazing how different they are from each other, even though they are siblings and only 8 months old." Harrison observed each baby with renewed attention. It was fascinating to see how 4 people who shared the same DNA and environment could have such distinct personalities. "Does that mean we'll need different approaches for each one as they grow?" asked Harrison. "Exactly," replied Rachel. "Each child will have unique interests, strengths, and challenges. The parent's role is to identify and stimulate these individual characteristics." Caleb absorbed all the information with intense interest. He was discovering that being a father went far beyond changing diapers and giving bottles. There was a whole science behind child development. In the following weeks, Harrison observed Caleb studying concepts of child development with the same dedication he showed in caring for the babies. The young man took notes, researched online, asked complex questions of Rachel. It was obvious he had an intellectual capacity well above average. Inspired by this, Harrison decided to accelerate the process of creating the educational foundation. He hired specialized consultants, lawyers, and educators to structure a truly effective program. 3 months later, the Parents of the Future initiative was officially created. Caleb would be not only the first beneficiary, but also one of the consultants, as no one better than him understood the real needs of young parents in vulnerable situations. The program offered a full scholarship, psychological support, professional childcare, career mentorship, and even housing assistance when necessary. It was revolutionary in its concept of social assistance, focused not just on emergency aid, but on real-life transformation. "Caleb, do you really want to try for medical school?" Harrison asked one day. "I'm afraid it might be too difficult. Here's what we'll do. You'll take an intensive preparatory course. If you pass the entrance exam, we move forward. If you don't, we choose another career. What do you think?" The proposal was fair and realistic. Caleb accepted the challenge. In the following months, the household routine completely organized itself around Caleb's studies. Rachel cared for the children during the mornings. Harrison, who had drastically reduced his work hours, took over care during the afternoons so Caleb could study. The evenings were dedicated to fatherly care and family time. Harrison discovered that caring for babies was simultaneously exhausting and invigorating. The first smile directed specifically at him, the first babble that sounded like Grandpa, the first time one of the children fell asleep in his arms, were emotional milestones that filled voids he didn't even know existed. Mrs. Hattie often commented on Harrison's transformation. "You've become a completely different person since these children arrived here," she would say. "Mrs. Eleanor would be so happy to see you like this." It was true. Harrison had regained a vitality and life purpose he thought he had lost forever. He woke up every day excited to see the children, follow Caleb's progress in his studies, and discover new aspects of fatherhood he had never experienced. 1 year after the children's arrival at the mansion, Harrison organized a first birthday party that became a milestone in all their lives. He invited Rachel, Mr. Frank, Mrs. Hattie, and their respective families. It was the first children's party the mansion had seen in decades. During the party, Harrison gave an emotional speech. 1 year ago, this house was a quiet and empty place. Today, it is a home full of life, laughter, and love. Caleb, you didn't just bring your children here. You brought hope and purpose back into my life. Caleb, visibly moved, replied, "Mr. Harrison, you gave us much more than a roof and food. You gave us dignity, opportunities, and a family we never thought we'd have." The 4 children, now 1 year old, already showed even more defined personalities. Noah had become a very observant and calm baby who preferred educational toys and spent long periods concentrated on activities requiring coordination. Chloe was extremely sociable, smiled at anyone, and showed a special interest in music. Liam was the adventurer of the group, always trying to climb things, explore new spaces, and constantly testing safety limits. Maya, who had been the smallest at birth, developed a strong and determined personality. She knew exactly what she wanted and wouldn't give up until she got it. "They're becoming unique little people," observed Rachel during one of the developmental checkups. "It's beautiful to see how the love and stability they receive is reflected in the healthy growth of each one." Caleb had progressed exceptionally in his studies. His performance in the college prep course impressed even the teachers, who commented on his dedication and ability to grasp complex concepts quickly. "I think you really have the makings of a doctor," said Caleb's biology teacher during a meeting with Harrison. It's rare to see a student with this combination of analytical intelligence and human sensitivity. The comment reinforced Harrison's confidence in his decision to invest in Caleb's education. But more important than that, Caleb was gaining self-esteem and beginning to believe in his own potential. However, not everything was perfect. Caleb faced emotional challenges related to the children's mother's abandonment. As the babies grew and began to babble, "Mama," he wondered how he would explain their mother's absence when the time came. One night, after the children had fallen asleep, Caleb sought out Harrison to talk about this concern. "Mr. Harrison, I keep thinking, one day they're going to ask about their mother. How am I going to explain that she just left and never came back?" It was an understandable anguish, and Harrison had also thought about it. "I think when the time comes, you'll tell them the truth in an age-appropriate way, that their mother wasn't ready to be a mother. But that doesn't mean they aren't loved. After all, they have you, they have me, they have a whole family that chose to love them." "But what if they feel rejected? What if they think there's something wrong with them?" Harrison put his hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Caleb, look at what you've built for them. Look at the love, the stability, the care. Children who grow up like this don't feel rejected. They feel loved. The consistent, loving presence of one father is worth more than 2 unstable presences." The conversation helped Caleb gain a calmer perspective on the situation, but it also sparked in Harrison a reflection on his own experience of a non-traditional family. The following week, Harrison received an unexpected call that would once again change the course of their lives. "Hello, is this Harrison Sterling?" said a woman's voice on the other end of the line. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Jenna Brooks. I am the mother of the quadruplets living with you." Harrison fell silent for a long moment, processing the information. Jenna, the woman who had abandoned 4 babies and disappeared for over a year. "What do you want?" asked Harrison, trying to control his tone of voice. "I want to talk about my children, I know they are living there with Caleb." "How did you know?" "I have been keeping an eye from a distance. I know Caleb is studying, that the children are well cared for. I want to speak with him." Harrison felt a mix of anger and protectiveness. How dare that woman come back after so long? "Jenna, you abandoned 4 newborn babies. You disappeared for over a year. And now you want to talk? Why?" "Because I was sick. Severe postpartum depression. I couldn't take care of myself, let alone 4 babies. But I'm better now. I got treatment and I want to meet my children." The explanation complicated Harrison's feelings. Postpartum depression was a serious medical condition, not a conscious choice. But the impact on Caleb and the children had been devastating regardless of the causes. "Where are you now?" "In New York City. I came back a few months ago. I got a job. I'm stable. I know I can't just show up and take the children, but I want the chance to be part of their lives." Harrison said he needed to talk with Caleb before anything else, and scheduled another call for the next day. When he told Caleb about the call, the young man's reaction was total panic. "She can't take them," said Caleb, desperation in his voice. "I raised them alone. I'm their father. She has no right to show up now and want to be a mother." "Calm down, Caleb. First, let's understand what she wants exactly. Second, you are the registered father. You have legal rights. Third, we have resources to handle this in the best way possible." But Caleb couldn't calm down. The possibility of losing the children left him in a state of extreme anxiety. That night, the 4 children felt the tension in the air. They cried more than usual, had trouble sleeping as if they sensed something important was happening. Harrison stayed awake all night, thinking about the situation. From a legal point of view, Jenna was the biological mother and could have rights to the children. From an emotional point of view, she was a stranger who had abandoned her children when they needed her most. From a practical point of view, the children had a stable and happy life that could be completely destroyed. The next day, Harrison called Jenna and arranged a meeting. He decided to meet her in person before involving Caleb in the conversation. Jenna arrived at the coffee shop at the exact time. She was a 24-year-old woman, brunette, thin, with a simple but striking beauty. She seemed nervous and emotionally fragile but determined. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," she said as soon as they sat down. Harrison studied her carefully. "Explain to me exactly what happened after the birth." Jenna took a deep breath before beginning. "When I found out they were quadruplets, I panicked. Caleb and I were very young. We hadn't been dating long. We didn't have the financial means for 1 child, let alone 4. During the pregnancy, I started having anxiety attacks, but I thought it would pass after delivery." She paused, clearly emotional at the memory. "After they were born, I just fell apart. I couldn't look at them without feeling panic. I couldn't breastfeed, I couldn't change a diaper, I couldn't even be in the same room. The doctors said it was postpartum depression, but I thought it was just a lack of maternal instinct." Harrison listened without interrupting, trying to understand her perspective. "On the 3rd day, when I saw Caleb handling all 4 babies so naturally, talking to them, taking care of everything, I realized they would be better off without me. I wrote a letter explaining and left the hospital." "And where have you been all this time?" "I went back to my parents' house in Ohio. I was in a very bad way for the first few months. I had intensive psychiatric treatment. Only after 8 months did I start to feel like a normal person again." Harrison processed the information. Jenna's story was tragic, but it didn't change the fact that Caleb had taken on all the responsibility and built a stable life for the children. Why did you come back now? Because I'm well. I have a job, I've had therapy. I understand now what happened to me. And because I feel I abandoned my children when they needed me most. I want a chance to make up for that. Jenna, do you understand that these children don't know who you are? That Caleb is the only parental figure they know? That he sacrificed everything to take care of them? I understand. That's why I'm not asking to take them away. I'm asking for a chance to be part of their lives in some way. Even if it's just visits, I want to try to build some kind of relationship. The answer was more mature and realistic than Harrison expected. Jenna didn't seem like an irresponsible person trying to selfishly claim rights. She seemed like someone who had faced serious mental health problems and was trying to deal with the consequences responsibly. I'll talk with Caleb, but understand, any decision will be made thinking about what's best for the children, not what's best for you or for him. Jenna agreed to the condition. When Harrison told Caleb about the conversation with Jenna, the initial reaction was total resistance. She can't just come back and want to be a mother. Where was she when Noah had pneumonia? Where was she when Maya almost died from dehydration? Where was she during all the late nights I stayed awake caring for them? Caleb's anger was understandable and justified. Harrison let him vent all the accumulated anguish. Caleb, I understand your outrage, but I need to tell you something important. Jenna was sick. Severe postpartum depression is a real medical condition, one that can leave a person completely unable to care for themselves, let alone babies. But she could have sought help. She could have stayed in treatment here. She didn't need to just leave. You're right, she could have made other decisions. But mental illness isn't rational. Depressed people make choices they wouldn't make in a healthy mental state. Caleb fell silent, processing the information. What does she want now? To meet the children. To have some kind of relationship, even if limited. She said she doesn't want to take them from you, that she recognizes you are their true father. And you believe her? Harrison hesitated before answering. I think she's being sincere about being better and wanting to be part of their lives, but I also think only time will prove if she's really changed. That night, Caleb talked with Rachel about the situation. As a professional in the child development field, she had a different perspective on the matter. Caleb, from the children's point of view, having a mother present, even if belatedly, can be positive, if it's done the right way, said Rachel. But it has to be gradual, consistent, and without pressure. How so? Short, regular visits. Let them get used to her little by little. If she's truly committed, she'll be patient with this process. If she's not, she'll give up when she realizes it's not easy. Rachel's perspective made sense to Caleb. If Jenna was truly changed and committed, she would prove it through consistent actions over time. If she wasn't, it would become obvious quickly. After much internal debate, Caleb agreed to allow Jenna to meet the children, but with strict conditions, short supervised visits in a controlled environment, and without any pressure on the children to recognize her as their mother. The first meeting was scheduled for a Saturday morning at the mansion in the presence of Harrison, Caleb, and Rachel. When Jenna arrived, her hands were visibly trembling. It was obvious she was extremely nervous to see her children for the first time since they were just a few days old. The 4 children, now 15 months old, were playing in the garden when she arrived. Noah was building towers with colorful blocks. Chloe was flipping through a picture book. Liam was trying to climb a plastic toy, and Maya was arranging little dolls in perfect rows. "My God," murmured Jenna, bringing her hand to her mouth. "They're so big, so beautiful." Tears streamed down her face as she observed each child individually. Harrison, despite his reservations about the situation, was moved by the genuine emotion Jenna displayed. Can I get closer?" she asked Caleb. Caleb nodded tensely. Jenna approached slowly and sat on the lawn, a few feet from the children. They looked at her with curiosity but without fear. After all, they were used to the presence of caring adults in their lives. "Hi, everyone," Jenna said softly. "What are you playing?" Noah was the first to approach, always curious about new people. He offered a colorful block to Jenna, who accepted it with trembling hands. "Thank you, Noah," she said, and the boy smiled. Chloe soon joined them, drawn by Jenna's gentle voice. Liam, always the boldest, came over and began babbling as if telling a story to the stranger. Maya was the most reserved, watching from a distance before deciding to approach. Jenna spent an hour playing gently with the children, always respecting their space and never forcing interactions. It was clear she had natural maternal instincts, but also that she was holding back her emotions so as not to frighten the children. When the visit ended, she said goodbye to the children affectionately, but without drama. They continued playing normally, as if her presence were natural. "How did you feel?" Harrison asked Jenna before she left. "It was incredible and painful at the same time," she admitted. "They're perfect, Caleb. You've done a wonderful job raising them." Caleb was visibly moved by the recognition. "Do you want to keep visiting?" he asked. "Very much, but only if you're all comfortable. I don't want to disrupt the stable life they have." In the following months, Jenna maintained a regular visiting schedule. Every Saturday morning, she spent 2 hours playing with the children in the garden. She never missed a visit, was never late, and never tried to overstep the established boundaries. Gradually, the children grew accustomed to her presence. They didn't call her Mom. They were still too young to understand complex family concepts, but they clearly enjoyed her company. Harrison watched Jenna carefully during the visits. She seemed genuinely interested in the children's well-being, asked questions about development and health, brought age-appropriate educational toys, and completely respected the house rules. Most importantly, she never tried to undermine Caleb's authority as the father. On the contrary, she constantly praised his work and asked for tips on how to better interact with each child. 3 months after the visits began, an event occurred that would test Jenna's true character. Liam, always the most adventurous, fell from a play structure during one of the visits and hit his head. It wasn't serious, but he cried a lot and was frightened. Any mother's instinctive reaction would be to try to comfort him immediately. Jenna, however, immediately called Caleb and stepped back so he could care for his son. Only after Liam had calmed down in his father's arms did she ask if she could help in any way. "Why didn't you try to comfort him?" Harrison asked later, curious about her reaction. "Because he doesn't know me as a comfort figure," Jenna replied with surprising maturity. "When a child gets hurt, they want their real father or mother, the person who's always been there. I'm still a friendly stranger to them. Trying to force an intimacy that doesn't exist would only have made him more scared." The answer deeply impressed Harrison and even Caleb. Jenna was demonstrating a very mature understanding of her place in the children's lives. During this period, Caleb had been accepted into medical school with an excellent score. The news filled the entire unconventional family with pride. "I can't believe I did it," said Caleb, still processing the acceptance. "I always believed you would," Harrison replied with emotion. "You're going to be an exceptional doctor." The celebration party was organized by Harrison, but he asked Caleb if he wanted to invite Jenna. It was a test of the young father's emotional maturity. "You can invite her," said Caleb after thinking for a moment. "She's part of the children's story, even if she arrived late." During the party, Jenna met Rachel, Mrs. Hattie, Mr. Frank, and the entire support network that had formed around the children. She was respectful to everyone and showed appreciation for each person's role in her children's lives. "It's incredible the family you've built," Jenna said to Harrison. "The children have so much more than many kids with traditional families." "Family isn't just blood," replied Harrison. "It's who chooses to stay and care every day." During the conversation, Jenna made a revelation that surprised everyone. "I've started family therapy," she said, "to better understand how I can be a positive presence in their lives without disrupting the dynamic that already exists." The initiative demonstrated once again that Jenna was taking the situation seriously and genuinely trying to do the right thing. 2 years after Jenna's return, the family dynamic had settled harmoniously. The children, now 3 years old, called her Aunt Jen and enjoyed her visits, but showed no confusion about who their real father was. Caleb was in his 3rd year of medical school, being one of the top students in his class. Harrison had further reduced his business activities to dedicate himself to his family and the expansion of the Parents of the Future initiative, which had already benefited more than 50 young fathers in vulnerable situations. Rachel continued working part-time with the children, but now also coordinated the educational program for Harrison's foundation. The children saw her as a beloved aunt and educational mentor. One afternoon, while the children played in the garden and Caleb studied for an important exam, Harrison and Jenna talked alone for the first time in a long while. "How do you feel about all of this?" asked Harrison. "Grateful," Jenna replied sincerely. "I know I'm not their mother in the traditional sense, but I have the chance to watch them grow and be a positive presence. It's more than I deserved after having abandoned them." "You were sick, Jenna. It wasn't a conscious choice." "Perhaps, but the consequences were the same. Caleb took on everything alone, and you all created a beautiful family for them. I'm just an addition to that family, and I'm at peace with that." Jenna's maturity and self-acceptance touched Harrison. She had truly changed and found her place in the children's lives without trying to disrupt the stability they had. That evening, during the family dinner, Harrison looked around the table. Caleb was helping Noah eat while talking about his studies. Rachel was telling a funny story that made Chloe laugh. Liam was trying to imitate the sounds he heard. Maya was meticulously organizing the food on her plate before eating. It was a completely atypical family scene, but full of love, stability, and joy. Harrison thought about how happy Eleanor would be to see that he had found a way to be both a father and a grandfather, to have a home full of children. 5 years later, when the children were 8 years old, Harrison organized a special family meeting. Caleb had just graduated from medical school with honors and would be the class speaker. It was time to legally formalize what already existed in everyone's hearts. "Caleb, I want to make you a formal proposal," said Harrison in front of the whole gathered family, including Jenna. "I want to legally adopt you as my son, and I want to adopt the children as my grandchildren. You are already my family in my heart, but I want it to be official too." Caleb was moved to tears. "Mr. Harrison, just Harrison, if you accept, we'll officially be father and son." The emotion overwhelmed everyone present. Mrs. Hattie cried, Rachel applauded, Mr. Frank smiled proudly. Even Jenna was moved by the scene. "Of course I accept," said Caleb, his voice choked with emotion. You've been my father for a long time." The children, now old enough to understand the meaning of the conversation, were thrilled at the idea of having an official grandfather. "Is Grandpa Harrison going to be our real grandpa?" asked Chloe, the most talkative of the four. "Yes, he is, my princess," replied Harrison, hugging her. The adoption process was simple, since Caleb was an adult, and the children had no other relatives contesting custody. Jenna, consulted by the judge for her opinion, stated that she fully supported the decision, recognizing it was the best for everyone involved. On the day of the legal formalization of the adoption, the whole family was present in court. The judge, moved by the unconventional story, made a point of commenting on the case. "It's rare to see a family formed by choice and love demonstrate such harmony and stability," he said. "You are an example that true family goes far beyond blood ties." After the ceremony, Harrison organized a party at the mansion to celebrate the family's official status. He invited all the beneficiaries of the Parents of the Future initiative, showing the children they were part of something bigger. During the party, Caleb gave a speech that moved everyone present. 8 years ago, I was a desperate young man, carrying 4 babies to work because I had no other choice. Today, I am a doctor, a father of 4 wonderful children, the son of a man who chose to love us, and part of a family that proves love builds bonds stronger than genetics. Harrison, visibly emotional, responded, "Caleb, you and these children saved my life as much as I may have saved yours. You gave me purpose, joy, and a reason to wake up every day with enthusiasm." The 4 children, now with fully developed personalities, each following their own interests and talents, represented the success of an upbringing based on unconditional love and emotional stability. Noah had become an introspective and curious child, interested in science and math. Chloe was artistic and social, loving music and drawing. Liam was athletic and adventurous, always seeking new physical challenges. Maya was organized and a natural leader, showing interest in helping other people and solving problems. Jenna remained a constant and positive presence, but always respecting her place as a complementary figure in the children's lives. She had built a healthy relationship with each child, based on respect and affection, without ever trying to compete with Caleb's paternal role. 10 years after that first day when Harrison saw Caleb cleaning windows with 4 babies, the family had become a national example of how love can overcome adverse circumstances and create true family bonds. Caleb specialized in pediatrics, inspired by his experience as a young father, and the knowledge he gained caring for his own children. He opened a clinic focused on low-income families, maintained by Harrison's foundation. Harrison became an activist for the rights of young single parents and expanded the Parents of the Future initiative to several cities in Brazil. His story with Caleb became an inspiration for public policies aimed at young parents in vulnerable situations. The children, teenagers now, were examples of healthy and balanced development. They were aware of their unconventional history, but saw it as a source of pride, not embarrassment. They understood they had a special family, built by choice and sustained by love. Rachel had married and had children of her own, but she continued to be a beloved aunt to the Quadruplets and an educational mentor for other families in the initiative. Mrs. Hattie, now retired, continued living in the mansion as the honorary grandmother to the entire family. Mr. Frank had become the children's official driver and confidant of their teenage secrets. One Sunday afternoon, 15 years after that first meeting, Harrison was in the garden watching Noah teach math to younger children from the program, Chloe playing piano for a group of elderly volunteers, Liam organizing a sports competition, and Maya coordinating a toy drive for underprivileged children. Caleb approached and sat beside Harrison on the porch. "What are you thinking about?" asked Caleb, now a mature 37-year-old man, a respected pediatrician and exemplary father. "I'm thinking about how our story began with you desperate, carrying 4 babies to work at a height, and how it turned into this," replied Harrison, pointing to the harmonious scene in the garden. "Sometimes I still can't believe how everything fell into place," said Caleb. "If you hadn't looked out the window that day. But I did, and my life gained meaning again. You all taught me that family isn't something that's born ready. It's something you build every day, with patience, love, and dedication." Jenna arrived for her weekly visit, now accompanied by her husband and the young daughter they had together. The children welcomed her affectionately as always, and she integrated naturally into the family dynamic, never disrupting or creating tension. "You know what amazes me the most?" Harrison continued. "It's how you created an environment where even Jenna found a healthy place for herself. That was only possible because you knew how to forgive and I learned not to judge." "Jenna proved she really changed," replied Caleb, "and the children benefited from having one more person who loves them. In the end, the more love, the better." That evening, during the family dinner, Harrison made a special announcement. "Everyone, I have important news for you. I've decided to donate a large part of my fortune to expand the Parents of the Future initiative across all of Brazil. I want our story to inspire thousands of other families to find unconventional ways to be happy." The children, now conscious teenagers, applauded the decision. They had grown up understanding they had the privilege of a comfortable life and that it came with the responsibility to help others. "Does this mean we get to keep living together?" asked Maya, always practical. "For as long as you want," replied Harrison. "This house will always be your home, but I also hope you'll fly with your own wings when the time comes." Noah, the most introspective, asked a question that touched Harrison deeply. "Grandpa, do you regret not having biological children?" Harrison looked at the 4 teenagers, at Caleb, at the entire family built by choice and love. "Noah, if I had had biological children, I might never have met you all. And you are exactly the children and grandchildren my heart needed. I wouldn't change a thing about our story." 20 years after that first day when Harrison watched a young man cleaning windows with 4 babies, the family had become a national symbol of how love can overcome any adverse circumstance. Caleb had become one of the country's most respected pediatricians, author of books on responsible fatherhood, and medical director of the largest network of pediatric clinics for low-income families in Brazil. Harrison, at 73, had become an internationally recognized philanthropist, with the Parents of the Future initiative being replicated in several Latin American countries. The four children had followed different but complementary paths. Noah graduated as an engineer and developed assistive technologies for children with disabilities. Chloe became a music therapist, using art to help children undergoing medical treatment. Liam became a physical educator, specialized in inclusive sports. Maya pursued law and specialized in family and children's rights. Jenna had become a psychologist, specializing in postpartum depression, using her own experience to help other mothers in similar situations. Her marriage remained solid, and she maintained an affectionate and respectful relationship with the children, always acknowledging Caleb as their true father. On a fall afternoon, Harrison was in his favorite chair in the garden, watching his great-grandchildren play, the children of Noah and Chloe, who had started families of their own. Caleb approached, now 42 years old, with graying hair at his temples, but with the same warm smile from when he was a desperate young man. "How are you feeling, Dad?" asked Caleb, naturally using the word it had taken him years to say without emotion. "Complete," Harrison replied serenely. "When Eleanor died, I thought my life was over. You all taught me that sometimes true life only begins when we think everything is over. The kids want to throw a surprise party to celebrate our family's 20th anniversary. Are you in?" Harrison smiled. "Of course I'm in, but only if Jenna and her family come too, and Rachel, and all the beneficiaries of the initiative we can gather." "Already planned," said Caleb, laughing. "You taught us that a big family is a happy family." At the 20th anniversary family celebration, Harrison was honored by hundreds of people whose lives had been transformed by the Parents of the Future initiative. Young parents who had managed to study, children who had opportunities they never would have had, families formed in unconventional ways but full of love. During his thank you speech, Harrison looked at Caleb, who had his own young children in his lap, and at the four young adults he had helped raise. 20 years ago, a desperate young man carried 4 babies to work because he had no other choice. Today, hundreds of young parents have choices because that brave young man inspired us to create opportunities. The story of our families proves that true love knows no limitations of age, social class, or traditional structure. Harrison paused, moved. "Caleb, you taught me that being a father has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with presence, dedication, and unconditional love. Noah, Chloe, Liam, and Maya, you taught me that a grandfather is made, not born. And all of you together taught me that family is who chooses to stay, who chooses to love, who chooses to build something beautiful every day." The speech ended with an emotional standing ovation from everyone present. But for Harrison, the most special moment was when the 4 young adults hugged him simultaneously, as they did when they were little children, whispering, "Thank you, Grandpa," in his ears. That night, after all the guests had left, the family gathered in the living room like in the old days. Harrison looked at each beloved face around him. Caleb, now a mature and accomplished man, Noah, brilliant and sensitive, Chloe, artistic and caring, Liam, courageous and determined, Maya, strong and compassionate. "Do you know what makes me proudest about our story?" Harrison said softly. "What, Grandpa?" they asked almost in unison, as they still sometimes did. "It's that we built a family that not only loves each other, but spreads love throughout the world. Each of you is using the privileges you've had to help other people. That's what makes a family truly special." Caleb stood up and hugged Harrison. "Dad, thank you for looking out the window that day. Thank you for choosing to love us. Thank you for giving us not just a roof, but a home. Thank you for saving the life of a lonely man who thought he had nothing left to live for," replied Harrison, moved. 25 years after that first meeting, Harrison passed away peacefully at home, surrounded by his entire chosen family. His last words were of gratitude for having found family love when he least expected it, and for seeing his children become exceptional adults. Caleb, now 47, assumed the presidency of the foundation and continued expanding the Parents of the Future initiative. The 4 siblings grew even closer after the loss of their grandfather, solidifying the family values Harrison had planted in their hearts. Harrison's will revealed one final surprise. He had left the mansion to become the permanent headquarters of the foundation, while ensuring there would always be space for the family to gather. It was his way of guaranteeing that house would continue to be a home full of love forever. On Harrison's headstone, Caleb had the words engraved that best summarized his story. A man who looked out a window and saw a family. A man who chose to love and was loved in return. A father, grandfather, and friend who proved that family is built with the heart. The story of Harrison and Caleb became legend in New York City and inspiration for national legislation supporting young parents. But for those who lived it, it was simply the story of how 4 babies in colorful slings transformed one man's loneliness into a family full of love, laughter, and purpose. Jenna, now a respected professional and a present mother to her second family, always kept alive the gratitude for having been accepted back into her children's lives in a way that respected everyone involved. She often shared her story in lectures on maternal mental health, showing that it is possible to rebuild relationships even after serious mistakes when there is sincerity, patience, and love. Rachel became the National Pedagogical Director of the Parents of the Future initiative, developing innovative methodologies for serving non-traditional families. Her own family grew up having the Quadruplets as honorary uncles, perpetuating the concept of an extended family based on affection. Mrs. Hattie and Mr. Frank, even retired, continued to be honorary grandparents to all subsequent generations of the family, proving that bonds of true affection transcend employment ties. 30 years later, when Noah was presenting his new assistive technology at an international conference, Chloe was debuting her musical play in a renowned theatre, Liam was inaugurating his sports center for underprivileged children, and Maya was defending an important cause in the Supreme Court. Caleb looked at an old photo of Harrison holding the 4 babies in the garden. "Thank you, Dad," he whispered to the photo, "for believing that 4 babies in slings and a desperate young man could become a beautiful family." The story that began with a gesture of desperation became the greatest lesson in love that New York City had ever known, and it continued to inspire families around the world to believe that true love can overcome any circumstance, build any family structure, and create bonds stronger than any adversity. Harrison had departed physically, but his greatest creation, a family united by unconditional love, continued growing, loving, and transforming lives forever. End of story. Now tell me, dear listener, what did you think of this moving story? Do you think Harrison made the right decision by welcoming Caleb and the Quadruplets? And Jenna, do you believe she deserved a second chance? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. I love reading what you think about these stories of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one. Thank you so much for your company.